coming to you from the historic Hart Building in Marysville, California, in Studio 93, in the Tank with Fish, with your host, Bob Fischetti.
Well, we're back for yet another In the Tank with Fish and Kelly. Kelly's appearance has changed slightly for today, but so actually what's happening is today I'd just like to thank everybody for viewing these and, the share, like, and do all that stuff and leave us a comment. Let us know, is there somebody you'd like us to interview? But today I'm going to have John Cassidy on because John went back to the inauguration. And before he went, him and I had a very brief conversation. With John, they're always very brief. Get to the point. Let's move on. Right. And I said, John, when you get back, would you be willing to come in and tell us what it was like firsthand to be there? And he said, how much are you going to pay me? I was like, really, John? Really? You're talking to a nonprofit. So I promised John I would give him a free cup of coffee, and he was willing to go for that. So stay with us because I'm going to be right back with John Cassidy. We'll be talking about what it was like to be there firsthand for the inauguration of Donald Trump. 93Q Radio was an opportunity for what's called an LPFM to give the community a voice.
The big part of what's happening here is it's us. It's the community of us.
The work that Mr. Fischetti has done with us to promote public education has been absolutely groundbreaking.
They have the pulse of our community from the nonprofits to the local governments. If you want to find out what's happening in our community, get on board with 93Q.
And 93Q does so much to help our community, helps us promote our local events, as well as local businesses, and tell our story about what we do here in Yuba Sutter.
The folks that work here, they're part of our community, so they understand our needs, and that's important.
Local radio is so important during times of emergency. They're there. We lean on them to provide information to our public.
My wife and I are glad to support 93Q. We're going to do it on a monthly basis, but I really recommend that if you want to make your community better, this is a great place to take a first step right here.
So if you can, reach deep in your pocket and give to 93Q.
93Q is a great partner for law enforcement, and they're a great partner for the Yuba Sutter area.
We're really asking people if you can give $10, $15, $20 a month, and then that enables us to continue to put small business spots on the air, nonprofits, organizations that they're using every dollar they got just to operate, and they don't have extra money to spend on really promoting their cause. And that is why community radio, to me, I'm grateful to be part of it, and that's why it's important. All right, we're back with the invincible John Cassidy.
Man.
I was looking in a dictionary, and in the thesaurus, invincible was the equivalent of another word that I really don't want to use.
Yeah, don't use it on here.
But you can't use it.
Yeah, don't use that.
How you doing, John? Good to see you.
It's good to see you, Fish. It's good to be back.
Yeah.
Actually, it was good to be away, and it's great to be back. So, yes.
Well, I noticed you didn't get frostbite.
When we flew home a week ago, last Friday, we flew home. We left the hotel at 3:30 to go to the Reagan National Airport in D.C. Mm-hmm. It was a balmy 3 degrees.
Gosh.
Yeah, and 3 degrees.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you went to the inauguration.
Yes, and we were there for the whole week.
So you didn't come straight home because you went down to L.A.
Sacramento.
Oh, that was in Sacramento?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you were at those events as well? And
yeah. Crazy time. Yeah, too much traveling for an old man, but it was worth it. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience to go to D.C. for an inauguration event that had so much vibe and passion and people from every corner of America, the diversity of people from all over the Western world that came to witness history being made. It was extraordinary.
I think I'm going to backtrack just a little bit to his election. And I love he honored his son. I can't remember, Brian, what was his
name?
Barron.
Yeah.
He honored him by saying, he told me to go on Rogan. And so Trump had an unusual number of young people. He had every race. None of that was an issue. People were voting for everybody they said wouldn't vote for him. He won both the popular vote and he won the Electoral College. And it's just unprecedented. We haven't had that. And then how did you end up with an opportunity to literally go see history?
Well, we got, I've been involved locally here in politics, in the background for a lot of years. And also I was in government affairs when I was CEO of California Credit, or CEO of Sierra Central Credit Union. I was involved in the California Credit Union League. So I was involved in our political action, both in the state of California and back in Washington, D.C. for, the better part of my career. So, I had decades dealing with political action to protect consumers in that role. From bad legislation. And to build a network of people. I'm good friends, obviously, with Congressman LaMalfa. When he was in the Assembly, we supported him. He supported our issues. James Gallagher, obviously, our local assemblyman, who's the Republican whip, the leader of the Republican Party in the state legislature in Sacramento, and you'll see him on news media all the time, whether it's local Sacramento television stations or national news on Fox or any of the other major networks, Newsmax, what have you, commenting, and they turn to him for guidance on what's going on in California as he fights the good fight for the citizens of especially Northern California, but Californians in general. So I've built up a lot of connections over the years, built a network, if you will, of folks that are involved at pretty high levels. And most of these people, if they're successful, they go up the ranks. So you get to know a lot of the staffers. Mark Spinaggles, the chief executive, his chief of staff, or Doug LaMalfa, phenomenal person, Northern California guy. And then Curtis Green is a legend, James Gallagher's chief of staff. And you build off their networks too. So we got a chance to go back. We had great seats for the outdoor that was planned. That got canceled.
That's probably
the day before. Yeah, it was, like I said, I left there when it was 3 degrees, and it was pretty much between 10 and 25 degrees most of the week. Most of the time you'd walk out, it's 15 to 18 degrees. You go outside, feels like you're getting, BB shot at your face when that air hits you. I don't know how George Washington got across the Delaware in that dense cold, and then you walk down the street and you turn up where there's a little breeze, and man, it gets your attention.
It drops again.
It gets your attention.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing week to be there. We actually walked in and got to sit into 2 confirmation hearings in the U.S. Senate, and my wife Christine went as well, and first time she'd ever walked the halls of the Capitol, and we walked across over to the Senate chambers and got in there, and we literally walked into to Mr. Turner's HUD, Scott Turner, the former NFL player who became HUD director, Housing and Urban Development, and right when we walked in, Liz Warren was peppering him, and he was just calm and collective and answering the questions brilliantly, and it was great to be part of that. In fact, Christine was on television for about 15, 20 minutes as they were focused on that hearing. But the dynamics, the vibe, the energy, the excitement throughout Washington, D.C., I've never seen anything like it.
So did you feel it like the minute you hit the ground? Could you just feel the intensity of it?
So we got there on the Wednesday before the Monday inauguration. We wanted to make a week of it so we could visit the monuments. She hadn't been back in 30 plus years, and I wanted to take her to some places that I'd been exposed to. And from the minute we got there, when we checked in the Sofitel Hotel, which Jackie Onassis actually did all the design of decorating. Wow. There's actually a couch from the White House when her and JFK were in that they actually use in front of the elevators that you can sit on while you're waiting for the elevator that was in the White House during those years. But so we were a block from the White House the entire time we were there. And it was the vibe from the minute we got there. You could just feel it building as we went through the week. Obviously, there was quite a bit of disappointment that the outdoor celebration was canceled, because you're talking hundreds of thousands of people on the mall watching that. And I actually had relatives come over from Ireland. My cousin Cheryl, her husband Richard, came over, both very accomplished people in Ireland. And their son David, his wife Emily, came up from Miami, and they had never experienced an inauguration. And Richard and Cheryl in Ireland are political junkies. They go all over the world and observe a lot of different political theater. And this was the first time to do an inauguration, and it was really eye-opening for them, because they frankly only hear from CNN, BBC, RTE, and Reuters in the country of Ireland, and so they get their news a little bit one-sided, maybe a lot one-sided. So they get a chance to kind of see for themselves and experience, a different way of looking at the world, and from people that are looking at things differently. Obviously, most of the people in D.C. for this celebration were Trump supporters, okay? Or people that were just fed up with, their wallets being, crushed over the last 4 years, which is really what happened. And I had told them a couple of years ago when we visited Ireland that this was what was going to happen based on energy prices soaring. And you could see credit card delinquencies and credit card balances soaring even two years before this election. And the majority of presidential national elections are decided based on pocketbooks. It's the economy, stupid, and it's more about it's the wallet, stupid. What's going on in people's wallets really determines who wins the presidency under normal circumstances when you don't have a COVID anomaly floating around out there, whatever.
You quoted James Carville, and I remember that where Clinton was going to go for his second term, and Carville told him that. And Clinton ran on the economy and won a second term.
That's correct. That's the only reason he won that second term.
And so I wondered about that when Trump began that, because I remember an interview with him, and they asked him, would he run for the presidency in 2016? And he said, if no Republican will run on the economy, I'll run. And he said, I'm not worried about money. My kids and my grandkids aren't, but America is. And then at that time, I don't know how many trillion we were in debt, but he said, America's in that much debt. We need to change that. So regardless of what people thought about Trump, I knew that was at the core. He was going to look at where we were fiscally, not just for the American people, but our financial standing in the world. He's a businessman.
Right. Well, again, I don't know I don't know what it would be like to spend, have lunch or dinner with Trump. He might be the most annoying person you've ever been around because he moves pretty fast and he's got his mind made up. But at the end of the day, his policies worked economically. So the economic team in his first term was an unprecedented success for America. And it got derailed because of COVID and all the anomalies associated with COVID. And so coming back in, one of the points I really want to stress here is about the people that attended this inauguration, because in fact we even spent time with Gianna Caldwell, who's a Fox News contributor. His brother was murdered in Chicago. He was walking out of school and he got walking through an area where these two gangs started shooting at each other, and his son was killed. His brother was killed, younger brother. And Gianna was just great, but he was one of the people that we ran into during the inauguration ceremony or right after it. We were at the Hamilton Hotel, which is right across the street from the Willard Hotel. The Willard is where three amazing things happen, and I'll touch on them later. But it's where the Civil War really began, inside the Willard Hotel, when there was a fight between representatives from the North and South that were trying to avoid a conflict or war and negotiate the slavery issue and other issues, economic issues, trade issues that were causing this divide. And then the term lobbyist was created from the Willard Hotel, and the term hooker from the Willard Hotel. And I'll explain all those later. Those are different stories, but there's so much history there. But we were at the...
You learn a lot of things here, folks.
You do. You do. So we were at the Hamilton Hotel after we were at the Sofitel for the actual inauguration, when he put his hand on the Bible. And we had tickets to go to Capital One Center, but it was 9-hour wait outside in the thing. We would have been fine if it was outside at the mall. We were supposed to be at the Capitol, but we weren't going to stand in line and wait at the Capitol Center while they're trying to squeeze 200,000 people into a 20,000-seat arena.
Yeah, I text you. I don't know.
Yes.
And I said, is that where you're at?
Yeah, no, we didn't want to deal with that. It was just too much. But the Sofitel where we were, the dining room was packed. There was 300 people in there. There was just one cowboy from... he had his cowboy hat on, and he was running around inside the restaurant, and he was putting bottles of Dom Perignon in front of every person. He must have bought 300 bottles of Dom Perignon and a pitcher of orange juice so people could make mimosas after the swearing in. But the buzz and the vibe, not only there, but then we walked all around the White House, all around the streets around the White House, and then into the Hamilton. And it was only 13 degrees, by the way, at this point in time. So it would have been a bad day on the mall for people, especially because of the blizzard conditions the night before in D.C. So there was 4 to 6 inches of snow on the ground. and people, there's no way they would have been able to navigate it. I think some of it probably had to do with security as well. Yeah, but for the most part, they didn't want people out there freezing to death.
Security on him is going to be tight.
Oh,
a lot tighter than it's ever been.
Yeah, no one's ever seen the security profile that existed in Washington, D.C. ever for any event. All the streets, they had them all fenced off. You couldn't go from point A to point B without going through checkpoints. And the checkpoints kept moving because when they moved the inauguration to Capitol One, the post-inauguration to Capitol One, after you did the rotunda, they had to block the lane, F Street, all the way down. So they had to move all these barriers. I mean, I've never seen more equipment move faster all night long. I mean, it was a blizzard. We actually were going to the red and white, the Western Caucus, red and white inaugural ball and reception. We were heading over there the night before the inauguration. This was on Sunday night. Inauguration was Monday the 20th. This was the 19th. And we left our hotel, the Sofitel, to go 10 blocks over. The maitre d' Mezle's wonderful man from Ethiopia. He was taking us over in the hotel car, and 10 blocks. We were in the car for an hour and couldn't get there because of the blizzard. And National Guard, because they were moving the streets, the National Guard was punching the window of the car. Get out of here, because this guy knew how to navigate the town, and he could have stopped. They routed him a mile away. So, well, guys, if you want to go, you're going to have to walk a mile back from here. And I'm literally, the snow's going sideways and it's like 12 degrees. No, just take us back to the hotel. So we unfortunately couldn't make the Doug Lamalfa as the chair's ball. A lot of people missed that because of the same reason. They couldn't get there because they started changing the streets. But, people had to deal with challenges the whole week because of the weather changes and because they were disappointed they didn't get to go to the actual inauguration because there was hundreds of thousands of people there to go, not just the ones like us that had tickets, but people could go stand in the mall and enjoy it. And they had big screens and all that. But there was no level of disappointment noticeable at all on Inauguration Day. No matter what restaurant, you were in Ebbets Grill, the famous Ebbets Grill, which was packed to the gills, whether you were in the Willard, you were in the View upstairs overlooks the White House, that restaurant, which is amazing. They're all packed. The Hamilton, the Occidental and the Willard, the Round Robin Bar, you name it, all everywhere. Joe's Stone Crab, Eddie Vans, Masters, they're all packed to the gills with people just celebrating this incredible event.
There was a great feeling, I think, for America, who felt like, and I know they talk about this, right? But it's like, it's almost as though we felt oppressed. Right.
Oh, yeah, right.
And so the minute this happened, it's like everybody felt different, right? And it's like, okay, I may be living clear out here in Yuba City and working in Marysville, but I felt it. I felt the shock wave of we are about to change radically.
Yes.
And so I think you must have felt, and the people back there, what a privilege to be there to see it. What a privilege to see this actually transpire. Because I don't care what anybody said, we were all waiting, right, for the 20th, right? And it's like, okay, so now it's actually happening.
Well, and
I don't know what the viewership was on for that.
Unprecedented.
But it had to be
unprecedented. You're sitting there and we hit a lot of spots during the 9 days we were there, and you're in the restaurant, especially up to inauguration. You're meeting people from all over the country, from every ethnicity, and they're all just
young and old. Bring that up.
We met a lady from Laredo, Texas, and before we go further, I got to thank my buddy Mark Cottaroli from the Bay Area, because Mark called us after the election happened, the day after, say, Johnny, let's go. We're going to the inauguration. I go, oh, okay, well, that's going to be kind of crazy. And he goes, well, no, can you get tickets? I go, oh, yeah, I know I can get tickets. He goes, let's go. I turned to Christine, you want to go? Oh, yeah, let's go. And then I called my relatives in Ireland who are political junkies, and I said, you guys want to go to the so, yeah.
And they said, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, I got the 5 tickets. We were ready to go, and, Congressman Lamalfa and his team were very nice to help us out. And, yeah, so that's what got us there. But we were sitting in the Hamilton having lunch one day, and there was a lady next to us who from Texas, Laredo, Texas, and she owns the biggest ranch on the Mexican-American border, and in Laredo, Texas, the biggest ranch down there. She lost her husband to traffickers, I believe, killed him. Was the story she told us, and she was afraid to go to her ranch anymore because it was so unsafe. And she told us some stories that people have no concept of. It's literally a war zone 24/7 on the border.
Yep.
It is. The media has not covered it at all at any significant level to showcase how dangerous and how insane it had become. And she actually owned not only did she own that ranch, which was like a 6th-generation ranch, family ranch, she owned a tea company in San Francisco that actually had a manufacturing facility in San Francisco and had a storefront in the Ferry Building in San Francisco, Laredo, Texas, and San Francisco. Go figure.
Yeah.
Very wonderful lady, but her story was compelling. And you heard stories from people that were, whether it's Giano and his brother being murdered, but people, you're so accurate in your comment about the sense of relief and, hey, we can finally deal with real issues and real, what's holding America back and what's causing some dangerous scenarios throughout this country. It's going to get dealt with, and it's going to get dealt with in a meaningful way. And
people asked me if I thought that Trump would put U.S. troops on the border, and my response was, as commander-in-chief, I believe he will, and I believe he'll support those troops.
Oh, yeah.
Because the very fact that he said, we're going to stop this, it's going to be a while before the wall's built, and you stop the flow and doing what they're doing and sending people back. But when people know U.S. troops have hit our border, now we've made a statement you can't make any other way. I believe that because I'm very militaristic in my thinking. So to me, it's strategic. So I'm absolutely thrilled to have a commander-in-chief that recognizes the sanctity of our borders and how important it is. And I actually, John, I think a lot of people, the economy, right? But that whole border thing, and I had heard stories like you're talking about with this woman. I'd heard more than one where it was just literally take over.
It's a war zone.
So I am thrilled with what he has already done. I believe he sent 1,500 troops, and I believe there'll be more.
Oh, no, there's no question. I mean, I think one of the things that I explained to my relatives a couple years ago when I visited Ireland, because every question was about Trump and what happened. Is he going to jail and all? I go, well, there's a fed up factor in America that's building. I said the reason he got elected the first time was because when he came into office in 2017 after winning the 2016, he was trying to fix a broken economy then. Mm-hmm. And people were fed up. That's how come he shockingly to some people beat Hillary. Well, he's a business guy. People were tired of how bad the economy had gotten by that point. And it's the same thing now. It doesn't change. And he's had 4 years to plan this time for real. And what his intent was, the first time he ran, was to bring in a bunch of successful, you pointed it out earlier in our discussion, successful business people around him. In his first run, that's what he wanted to do. That's not what he was able to do with his entire cabinet, because the D.C. establishment is very powerful. Mm-hmm. The D.C. swamp is very powerful. And if you've never been there and had to swim in that ocean, so to speak, in that world back there, it's a very complex, very layered place to try to accomplish anything. And as an outsider, whether you're Jimmy Carter, whether you're Ronald Reagan, whether you're Donald Trump, coming from the outside is very difficult to navigate what goes on in Washington, D.C. and understanding how the sausage is made, understanding who you can really trust to move your agenda along, because people will tell you what they think you want to hear, but they won't really do what you want them to do. And that's really what happened in a lot of his, plus he's fighting. I mean, the Washington Post headline, January 20th, 2017, Inauguration Day. The headline above the fold, and I'll show you this one because this is January 21st of 25. But when he won the last time, his first day in office, the banner headline above, and I don't have that one here, but the banner headline above in the Washington Post was "Impeachment begins today."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So whole different mindset. This is the day after the election on the Washington Post. I brought this. It says Trump's stark vision. So the Washington Post continues to kind of try to shed a negative light. Instead of saying America celebrates, new president, they throw that out there.
Yeah.
Yet, if you look at the New York Post, a headline exactly the opposite: America's excitement about the future. It's just amazing how different publications will try to skew reality. If you were on the ground there, there's no and there was I think 30 protesters in one corner of D.C. that nobody could even hear or see. The positiveness, the diversity of people from all over the country and all over the Western world that were there celebrating this moment and looking forward to the future about what the possibilities were and how people were going to get and businesses were going to get unshackled and they could move things forward, it was like you're walking 3 feet off the ground.
I felt like America was introduced to we the people.
Yeah.
I felt like America got reintroduced to the concept of we the people. The people put him in. And I noticed news commentaries have consistently pointed out to those that object to the Trump presidency that, well, we the people.
Right.
And then, you have to understand, no matter what you think, the Democratic Party at one time was the party of the people.
Right.
Now, the Republican Party has now become what the Democratic Party had started. So we've had a significant change. I wanted to mention this. I have a great admiration for Newt Gingrich for this statement, right? He, after 2006 contract with America, he got on the news and he said, the reason that you won't see another Republican president for a while is because we botched that contract. We went to Washington to change Washington, writing the comment that you just said about that with the swamp. And instead, they changed us, and we wrote more pork than the Democrats did. And he said, so now we're not trusted. And to have Donald Trump come in and to see the people that he's putting in and to see the rapid changes that are occurring, I honestly, John, I feel like for a change, it's like I went through a season, I know you did, where does my vote count? Well, trust me, people. Your vote counted.
It did.
Your vote counted. He won by such a huge margin that he now has a freedom to move. So I'm kind of glad he had that first experience.
Yeah,
because he got to see it, got a chance to think it through. What am I going to do differently? They're not going to do this to me the next time. And they knew that. I think that's why they tried to keep him out.
Great point on Newt Gingrich's comment. And there's a lot of scholars now, quote unquote scholars, that are starting to understand. And Victor Davis Hanson's a wonderful, thoughtful person and really bright. He's with the Hoover Institute at Stanford. And he's a farmer from the Fresno Valley, really smart guy, grounded person. He's made a comment that I've shared with people as well, that for the country's sake, it's probably better how it played out that Trump did not get reelected the first time.
I believe it.
Because the contrast of what happened in the economy, which again, I will sit here and go to my grave with the argument that it's always about the economy, stupid, or your wallet. That's what determines elections. Mm-hmm. Well, people went from a very successful period economically to a very, very inflationary period
very
economically.
Quickly when you think
I mean, things cost when eggs go from $4 a dozen to $13 a dozen, it's a significant problem. And energy prices and energy prices here, when they're out of sight, are worse worldwide, especially in the Western world. So people in Europe really felt that as well. And so the changes that people are going to start feeling and experiencing for their own wallets is what people wanted. That's why he got elected. Again, it's a timeless recipe, and that recipe really doesn't change over time. And the media has really lost a ton of credibility. The main quote unquote stream media has lost so much credibility through this period or these periods. And now people have more information they can go get themselves through the internet, through all sorts of podcasts like this, through all sorts of media research they can do on their own. They don't need it interpreted. They don't need to hear things that they're not seeing, but they're being told are real when they're seeing things that aren't real in front of them, i.e., again, what's going on in their own wallets. So I think this period is an opportunity for America to leap forward and to pull the rest of the Western world and the free world along with it. A rising tide lifts all boats. And I think that's what Europe's feeling. You can even, if you watch the Davos summit when Trump was speaking and the Q&A that they had when he was speaking there this week, that was an awakening for the quote unquote globalists. And their countries have struggled economically for decades for a lot of different reasons, but they can see the writing on the wall and it's already happening. The new premier in Italy, she's aligned with with Trump. In Germany, that's happening. In other countries, it's starting to go, we better get our act together quick here because we're going to be the paupers of the world if we don't get our economies in gear and start allowing our people to generate more income and make our economy stronger and better across the board. It's the phenomena that he's creating. To your point, he is a businessman. Everybody knows that, and that's how he's going. That's how he's governing.
Negotiator.
Yeah, and that's how he's governing.
He will treat. I heard him make a statement about the Ukraine, and he said, Putin doesn't have enough money to keep this going. I mean, a typical business perspective, right? You're going to run out of money trying to keep this going. He said he'll make some deal because he can't afford to continue.
Correct. Well, it's like the whole Colombian thing with the Colombian president when we tried to bring back criminal illegal aliens to drop them back off in Colombia, and they refused. First, they said they would take the planes. Then they refused to have the two planes land from America that were dropping these people back off that they arrested here, and it took them about 20 hours for this guy to go, okay, yeah, we'll take them.
As a matter of fact, he's using his plane to go get them.
Yeah, we'll see if that happens.
And it's like, I just want to say this. A few presidents ago, we were promised hope and change.
Right.
At the end of that presidency, we hoped we had some change.
Right.
It really didn't work.
It's a good way to coin it. And that's why Trump got elected.
And then Trump comes in. He never had to say hope and change, but everybody knew that's what's going to happen. And so I know that you having gone back there, you could feel the hope.
Oh, yeah.
You got to be in the middle of it. And if you haven't been watching the news over this last week, change has happened.
Oh,
so
no.
we're getting change. Change is happening.
At lightning speed.
At lightning speed.
Lightning speed. And they'll make some mistakes, but the one mistake that he has not made this time is he has got an all-star cabinet that they put in place. You know, you want to be successful in any endeavor, make sure your mentors are successful people. Don't let people tell you how to do things that have never accomplished those things. Okay? So, yes, they'll make some mistakes, as all administrations do, but what he wanted his first term was to put an all-star band of successful people in roles that they could make the country more successful. Well, when you look at the resumes of the people he's put in place, what they've accomplished in their actual careers, it's a very prominent group of people. It might be the all-star cabinet of all time. And yeah, there may be some minor question marks about, well, they haven't really played at that level in certain ways. Well, maybe they haven't, but Michael Jordan wasn't a superstar until he got to the NBA because he was a great player in college. So sometimes you have to take that leap of faith. And I think there's some people that are going to shock the country and how great a job they're going to do. I mean, you look at Besson, who just is going to be the Federal Reserve Federal Reserve chair. That guy, not Federal Reserve, Commerce Department.
Commerce,
he's going to just Secretary of Commerce. He's going to be he's probably the most talented person ever to be nominated for that role. And so
what about Pete Hegseth? When I heard that, right, the first thing that struck my mind, having been in the military, is the guy's a major. He's not a general.
Right.
But his thinking.
But he's a citizen.
His thinking.
He's a citizen. It's a citizen's role. It's not a military role. Yeah.
But his thinking concerning the military is right on line.
It's about the warfighters. It's about the guys on the ground.
Exactly. And, for one guy in theater, in combat, it takes 233 people to support that.
Right.
And I personally have felt that over the years, our military has been, I'm just going to use this word, I don't know how else to say it, cheapened. Right? It doesn't have the same pull that it had because you got troops doing twice the mission with half the people.
Right. And
changes that were made.
Well, you could speak to that firsthand.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a veteran. I mean.
I talk to guys that are in, they say, man, we can't do that now. We can't do this now. We can't do that. And it's like the thought that somebody would get in that Department of Defense and people and begin to say, look, these policies need to go. These are warfighters. They need all the support that they can get. They need to be honored. They need to be. And I feel like Trump gets that.
He totally gets that.
I feel like he gets that. Well, I don't. know that he has a significant military background, but he sure does understand.
He understands putting the right people in the right place to make the difference. And the military's has been diluted in the fact that their ability to.
That's what I meant by cheapen.
Yeah, I mean, it's their lethalization has been diluted over time. That's obvious to anybody. You've been in the game. You know. You've served, and you understand that. And we have Beale Air Force Base in our community.
Right here in our backyard.
And there's been limitations there over time, too, that have changed pretty dramatically. I got here in 85, and there's a lot of things that they don't have necessarily the capacity that they used to have to accomplish, that they have to find other ways to do things. And it's not how it should be. These people need to be supported at a level that keeps our country safe. And
if I was 19, I'd go in the military today.
Now,
because you had a commander-in-chief like this.
With that kind of support.
I'm in.
Right.
You know,
and there's been a lot of people that haven't gone in for the very reasons you stated, is that it's not like it's not like we really matter. We're just pawns instead of being soldiers.
And he said the guys that got pushed out over that shot business are going to get to go back in and get their back pay.
And their rank.
Help me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think on so many fronts, but again, being in D.C. for that 9-day period before, during, and after the inauguration, and the vibe, it's nothing I've ever experienced. Like a Super Bowl on steroids. I mean, it was like your team won the Super Bowl on steroids. Like the joy people were experiencing was just unbelievable. And for people from every walk of life, it was incredible to have discussions with folks that were just uplifting everybody's stories and the camaraderie of people from, I'm talking everywhere in the country, people from New York, LA, Chicago,
so you mean
Detroit,
the people
Texas,
from New York,
Mississippi, Louisiana.
people?
It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. And the restaurateurs, the folks, the service people working in the restaurants, the Uber drivers, they were just blown away.
Oh, they hadn't had that kind of business in a long
time. Blown away. Well, and just how they were treated.
Yeah.
You know, people that came in from the outside were really, you know,
tip big,
tip well,
yeah.
But treated these people with dignity. It was a wonderful thing to experience on so many levels.
Have we moved from arrogance to humility?
I think we've come a long way. Yes, we have.
Because it's like I hear that from people, right? That they feel like as much as Trump has been accused of being arrogant, the truth is he's just a businessman. He's moving at business speed.
Right.
He's going to do what he said he'd do, which I do have a question for you concerning finance about that. But it would seem as though something, and I've heard people that opposed him say something's different about him.
Yeah, I think
something has changed. He got
his ear shot off and almost got killed.
I think
so. I mean, I think
he said that.
You find the Lord a little more important in your world when you survive something like that. He's way different in his public discourse today than he was in his previous presidency. I think at some point people tend to mature. Sometimes it takes in different ways. I don't want to say he was an immature human being. I think in his ability to communicate, he's definitely matured, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he punches. He's not punching down anymore.
No.
I think he's just kind of letting the noise just dissipate on its own and letting people around him take those fights on.
Handle it, exactly.
And I think to his credit, whoever's handling it, and I think it might be Susie Wiles, his new chief of staff, the first female ever in that role, by the way. I think she's got his ear in a way that very few people have ever been able to just say, hey, look, Don, we're going this route. You're spot on here. This is kind of how we need to communicate this. Okay. He's listening instead of just kind of ignoring. Now, with that said, he's still Donald Trump.
Exactly.
He's probably going to have a moment or two where he's just not going to put up with stuff. And he's going to probably go off in some tangents that maybe he's not 100% accurate. But I think this time he'll self-correct in ways where before he didn't have the people around him to help him do that.
Help him do it, yeah. So I wanted to talk to you about a couple areas. The main one is my experience with the economy has been, it's like when a plane's in a nosedive and you pull the handles back, it doesn't immediately come up.
Correct.
And so I think some people may be expecting our economy to change overnight, right? But realistically, John, you've been in finance for a very long time. You've watched things. You're pretty aware, right? So, and also sometimes things for the economy will change back east before they ever hit California, right? We were the last ones to come out of the hole last time.
Yeah.
So what do you think's going to happen now?
Economic cycles are economic cycles, and they're affected by policy, and policy is people. People in this case are Donald Trump and his economic team. You have to go by their previous track record. They were able to move the economy forward at a pretty good pace. The one advantage he has in this case is if he can get gasoline price, if he can get, he drill baby drill, the faster that happens. I mean, everything from the clothes you wear to the plastic bags you grab your groceries in, if we can still do that in California for a little bit longer. Everything that oil prices affect.
Oh, just the transportation of goods.
Everything.
If that goes down, then that freight goes down.
Everything gets affected. So my bet is he probably has a better economic team hitting the ground running this time than he did the last time. And the last time he had an A-plus team. So I think it's going to take some time. It's funny how you look at the quote-unquote mainstream media trying to hang him already. He's a week in the job, and egg prices haven't fallen, but they actually have fallen by about 20 to 25% already, and that's exclusive of the problem that you had with the bird flu where they had to kill all the chickens because they couldn't take a chance on bird flu getting into the egg.
Those of us in Yuba City
system
can just walk around, pick up our eggs.
Yeah. Yes, we can just do that in Yuba City. We got that going for us. Yeah. But anyway, I believe that the economic cycle, it will move up a lot quicker than we've ever seen. For that factor, that's a major factor in my mind, is the energy prices affect so much that if you can get the energy prices to a level where they need to get quickly, things will really take off.
That'll shift a lot of
big
things.
time. Yeah, big time. And obviously in California, we're going to see some repercussions from the LA fires because they've thrown around figures 50 billion, 100 billion. I think when it's all said and done, it's probably going to closer to 300 billion when they have to
easily
manage all that in LA. So that's going to affect California, I think, quite a bit, at least at the state level. So we'll see what happens there. But I think, speaking of California, I think Donald Trump, that's one of his targets to turn around and gain favor with California voters. And I think that's why he quickly got to California after he visited North Carolina that last Friday, the first week. And our Congressman James Gallagher and our Congressman Doug LaMalfa and our Assemblyman James Gallagher both were in that roundtable meeting in Los Angeles that was televised with the president. And the president really wanted to shine the light on LA and leadership in California that, hey, man, we're watching this and we're putting you on notice. These people need help. Maybe a lot of these people didn't vote for me, but they need your help. And we're going to change the permitting process. We're going to keep the pressure on you to make sure these people can get their ground cleared. Whatever needs to happen to get all that done, we'll support. I think they're gonna send in the Army Corps. At least they're doing that in the Carolinas.
Yeah.
And hopefully that speeds up the recovery for Los Angeles. But economically, I think the country's in better shape than people think because of the 3 months prior to the election. A lot of things shifted. A lot of things were already shifting because the expectation was Trump was going to win. So a lot of companies reinvested in ways where they could come through early at 25 and really start generating more jobs, more income.
Yeah.
You see it in the numbers. And so I think we'll come through this period pretty well. I think 25 will actually end up being a pretty good year as we get into the second half of the year, especially. Not sure there'll be more than one rate cut. There might not even be a rate cut. It's funny, historic, mortgage rates, and you know this as well as anybody, mortgage rates at 6 to 7% level, those are historic.
Yeah.
That's usually, that's a pretty good number.
Yeah.
But people got used to 2.5%, 3.5%.
That's it.
And it changed the paradigm. The reality is that historically, 6 to 7% mortgages are pretty much what are great rates.
My first house was like 13 or 14
exactly.
or
people
something.
don't, you and I are old.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to tell you. My first was a lot more than that. So, but yeah, I mean, good things are going to happen. more quickly with this administration economically because of the people he's put in. In fact, I even heard Bissett say that he's considering getting rid of income tax and going to a consumption tax. He talked about that after his approval yesterday.
I've always thought that would be the right thing.
That really levels the playing field.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no more, well, you didn't pay your fair share. You buy something,
you pay for it.
You pay for it.
And you can't make the comment that people, supposedly the wealthy, don't pay their share. Well, they're buying more expensive.
You buy a yacht. And I buy a plastic boat.
So I'll be interested to see how that stuff starts floating. But everything from Greenland. In fact, we started, good friend of mine, Bob Nealon, back in D.C. I introduced him to my relatives. We had a great dinner at Landini Brothers in Alexandria one night, Saturday night back there. And my relatives got to meet him. He's a big Irish American. Anyway, we started so you have the Greenland movement, one word, Greenland, the whole concept of us buying Greenland and having it as a military installation, which is strategic. And then we said, okay, well, that's nice. Once that is accomplished, and interestingly, Bob's a lifelong Democrat, great guy. And I won't tell you who he voted for. I don't want
to embarrass him.
Yeah, but it will surprise you who he voted for. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
So we're going to start the free Greenland two words movement, where we make Ireland the 52nd state. If we go with Greenland as 51st, then we go Greenland two words. That movement. That's the 52nd state, because there's 40 million Irish American immigrants because of the famine and everything that happened in Ireland.
Yeah.
I believe there's more immigrants connected to Ireland than any other European country. There's a lot of Irish Americans like me. And so, and they've always kind of considered themselves the 51st state anyway. So after we get Greenland, one word, we'll go for the Greenland.
Yes.
Two words, Ireland.
Yeah.
So we had some fun joking around about that. So
we only got a few minutes left, but I want to get this out of you, and that is Trump in California. And the reason I want to bring that up is because when he had that mayor in that conference, he said, I've got emergency authority. So he said, you have it, use it. And I think that is going to be key to what he does. California, you can do this. Quit giving the people reasons why you can't.
Correct.
Quit doing that. And I thought that was very telling. I know he can change some policies in D.C. that will eventually affect California. But I was very grateful that he came out here directly. He confronted Gavin. He confronted
Karen Bass.
mayor.
Yep.
Yeah, he did that and just said,
on behalf of the citizens.
Exactly.
Most of whom didn't vote for him.
It had, yeah. And so, John, what do you think the repercussions? Because I know that politically, him and Newsom couldn't be any farther apart in their thinking. So, what do you see happening for us in California?
I'll make some bold predictions. First of all, Trump National down near Long Beach, that golf course development, top shelf. He had to firsthand deal with the California Coastal Commission, which he called out during that roundtable with Congressman Lamalfa, James Gallagher, Kevin Kiley, Congressman from Placer County, and all the leadership in Los Angeles Basin, some of Newsom's people. Interestingly, Newsom wasn't in that room for that roundtable. Newsom showed up to greet Trump on the tarmac without an invitation, which was kind of interesting. So to some level, Trump will work with Newsom. But you got to remember, in 2018, when we had the Paradise Fire and Newsom had just been elected, Governor Brown was still in place, Trump came out there, James Gallagher, Lamalfa were all up there, and Trump's walking around the fire scene up there, the post-fire scene, asking, why is all this shrubbery and isn't there only one way in and one way out of here? Why is the shrubbery, why is the trees, why is the forest all the way up and not cleaned out? Now, why is there so much fuel still here on the ground around this town? Why isn't this managed better? He was asking then, that was in 2018. Mm-hmm. That was 7 years ago. And Newsom at the time said, oh, yeah, we're going to change how we do all this. Well, no, you didn't. Obviously, look at what happened in Palisades. As Assemblyman Gallagher likes to say, from Paradise to Palisades, same problems. And, there are grand jury reports for decades up in Butte County about the Paradise potential, which is why they could never keep a a fire chief for more than a year or two because they would just land there, get that status and move on because no one wanted to be there when that happened because it was predicted.
Yeah.
And same thing down in Los Angeles. So you asked me about the whole scene. I think Gavin Newsom's going to have a hard time beating a recall this time. I think this coming November, it's going to emanate from Los Angeles, not the rest of California. There are people that are livid.
Yep.
Karen Bass, I think, is going to get recalled as the mayor of Los Angeles when Caruso, the guy who beat her, was able to protect his 2 malls down there in the Palisades because he brought in his own fire trucks, personally paid for them, and he was able to manage his own situation, and she was over out of the state during what was predicted to be a very challenging time, and she left the state anyway to visit a foreign country when she should have stayed here to manage that potential problem, which she said she would never leave the country while she was mayor. I think they've got some serious problems. I think Trump sees it, and his administration sees California now as an opportunity to move the needle. It already started to move in the last election cycle, but I think now it's as a real chance to get much more common sense driven people into the governmental structure in California. It's still going to take a while for it to become, more balanced, if you will, and more people with real common sense making decisions, because you can't be emotionally ignorant, or as one of my relatives would call it, you can't be indifferent to reality anymore. Mm-hmm. You have to deal with the reality. And that reality that happened in Los Angeles, and I don't think those fires are out completely yet, has shocked the LA basin like never before. So hopefully, and that's where the largest population density is in the state, is in the LA basin. Mm-hmm. And if that really starts to change dramatically, as much of the rest of the state has really started to shift to a more common sense oriented way of life and electing those type of leaders, I think we're going to be in pretty good shape. And I think that's the opportunity Trump sees, because he loves California and he's a developer. He knows that the development opportunities in California are tremendous. And when you're losing Chevron headquarters, Elon Musk moves out. Bank of America left a long time ago. When you look at all these companies that have left California and taken the jobs with them, and all the people with money who've left because the tax base is so ridiculous, that's got to change. And the other point I'll make, and I think this is going to bring is really going to help our local Northern California communities. As Sites Reservoir, was approved in 1945 and never funded.
Wow.
There's many other projects like Sites Reservoir, and that's another Lake Oroville level reservoir. And the problem, and President Trump gets this a little bit skewed, it's not the amount of water that we have that's the problem. It's this ability to store it and use it where necessary. We're 6 to 8 dams behind. Our last reservoir California's built was like New Melones in the late 70s. That's 20 million people ago.
Yeah.
So, it's about this is going to help us create the water storage that's needed, and also hopefully bring back some more logging and forestry practices, especially up in our neck of the woods, the top third of the state, that to really prevent the apocalyptic fires that were actually predicted in the early 80s in testimony in the state assembly and the state senate, that the state of California has not really paid attention to.
I just real quick, I had a gal that came in, and she has a company that takes that clears the forest, right, of the junk that doesn't, right, and turns it into usable energy. Right.
Oh, yeah.
And so she did this a few years back, and I think we're going to see stuff like that. So listen, you and I have talked about possibly doing a regular program where we can stay on top of this stuff.
That's why we're having lunch after this podcast.
Is that why we're
having it?
Yes,
we're having lunch.
So
Kurt's buying, by the way. He doesn't know yet.
I love it. All right, Kurt. Well, John, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. I know you just got back. You probably got stuff to do, but I appreciate it.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
In our local region here, one of the really economic, the economic force for the last, since the 50s, has been Beale Air Force Base. One of the things we need to focus on locally here and regionally is taking that to another level again. And that's going to happen in the next few months, because there's tremendous opportunity for Beale to take on a whole different enhanced mission and missions to help protect this country, because there's a lot going on in the Indo-Pacific region. So stay tuned for that. And that's another economic piece to this puzzle out here that's a big deal going forward.
All right.
Big deal.
Well, I want to thank everybody for listening, and I am going to have lunch with John Cassidy, and so be looking
at the brick,
and so be looking forward though, because John and I have talked about this for quite some time about doing a regular program that helps us in our area understand our area. I've said it before: we're an island. You can't leave here without hitting agriculture. John has put it that we're an island of sanity in the middle of a sea of insanity.
Bingo.
So either way, we're going to put that together. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment if there's something that you're interested in, and then we'll be letting you know when we kick off this other podcast. But again, thanks for being with us here on, well, John's not the minnow. So
no, absolutely not.
In the tank with fish and jaws right here.
I like it.
93Q TV.